King's Demons brings us to the end of Doctor Who Season 20. As with the previous season, it's been a mixture of good and bad stories with little consistency, but the overall quality is probably slightly higher. The decision to bring back recurring villains in every story doesn't really have much effect. They've mainly been humanoid villains like Omega, the Master, and the Black Guardian, where they could easily have just brought back a load of old monsters and just done a whole season of Base Under Siege stories. In fact, all of the iconic monsters, the Daleks, Cybermen, Sontarans, Ice Warriors, and so on, have made no appearances at all this season, although the next story does make up for that. This follows the template set by Black Orchid in Season 19, being a two-parter set in Earth's history. Here we are in England in 1215, where the TARDIS lands in the middle of a jousting tournament. As we've come to expect from a historical story, all of the sets and costumes are decent enough. There's dogs and horses and jesters, everything you would expect from a Robin Hood style romp. Of course, this is way before Game of Thrones and even before Robin of Sherwood, but it's definitely aiming at the same sort of territory. Gerald Flood plays King John. His performance is rather arch and theatrical compared to some of the other actors. Frank Windsor and Isla Blair are both solid performers, but they do kind of fade into the background compared to Flood's scene-stealing performance. It could just be a subtle way of foreshadowing the big twist in part 2, or he could just be overacting. The King also embraces the TARDIS crew as his pet demons, which is even stranger, and goes against the usual storyline where they all get locked up immediately. I guess there's no time for that here, as there's only 2 episodes. But Turlough does end up in chains for the second time in 2 stories. I won't speculate on whose idea that might have been. The Doctor ends up in a sword fight with Sir Giles Estram, who is very obviously Anthony Ainley putting on a terrible French accent. I can't remember if I spotted him the first time round. TVs were a lot smaller back then, and I was a lot younger, but right now it does seem very obvious. The scene is presumably an homage to the sword fight that the Third Doctor had with the Master in the Sea Devils, but that one was far superior. This one just feels really slow and stagey in comparison, but at least you can tell the actors are all doing their own stunts. The Master being involved at all is really odd. The Doctor even comments that changing history isn't usually his sort of thing. It would have made more sense if they'd brought back the meddling monk, who was plotting to steal the Noble's riches using the fake King John, as that would have been much more in character for him. King John turned out to be an android called Chameleon, which may or may not explain his overacting. The robot does look impressive, but it can barely move, let alone walk. So it's obviously just another one of John Nathan Turner's bad ideas. We don't even see the character again until his final appearance, when he should have been a regular companion from here on in. They didn't even need to use the robot. They could have just had a different guest star on board the TARDIS every week and just call them Chameleon. The ending is a huge anticlimax. The Doctor and the Master have a psychic duel, and then he just drags Chameleon on board the TARDIS, leaving the Master to do as he pleases. He mentions sabotaging the Master's TARDIS, but we don't see the results of that until Planet of Fire, and before that he is in the 5 Doctors, so I'm not sure how that tracks, but I guess we'll find out soon enough. Tegan is particularly annoying throughout this story, complaining about the cold, when it's her fault for going out in a dress that's basically just a long t-shirt, and then complaining about Chameleon. There is a very satisfying scene where it seems the Doctor's had enough of her and pretends to send her back to Earth. It turns out to be just a ruse, but she definitely deserved it, and hopefully she'll stop whinging from now on. The DVD has 2 main extras. Chameleon Metal Man is a 13-minute documentary, with Eric Sayward explaining how Chameleon ended up on the show, and Peter Davison and Nicola Bryant telling stories about how it never worked. And Magna Carta is a 22-minute documentary about the real-life history of King John and the signing of the Magna Carta, with clips from the King's Demons and the Crusades used to illustrate it. Sadly, it doesn't have that famous clip from Tony Hancock. Have you forgotten Magna Carta? Did she die in vain? But I guess you can't have everything. As it's a 2-parter, I also had time to listen to the DVD commentary. Unfortunately, there's no companions this time, just Peter Davison, Isla Blair and Eric Sayward. Davison does get in some of his trademark ribbing at the quality of the show, but without Janet Fielding there to egg him on, it's all very subdued. But still there are some good digs at the expense of the writer Terence Dudley. Overall it looks great with impressive sets and costumes, but there's not much of a story and Chameleon is rubbish. 3 out of 10. Next week, the 5 Doctors. We've finally reached the 20th anniversary. Only another 40 to go. I'm going to be doing this till I'm old and grey. So subscribe to see what I made of that, and I'll see you next time.